Interestingly, comedians are saying they've sensed a mood change among audiences. Now, this year's Oscars made headlines after Will Smith slapped host Chris Rock for making a joke about his wife. And then a few months later, comedian Dave Chappelle was attacked on stage. So has there been some kind of shift? Seb's been to chat to local comedian Danny Johns.
I think it's a little bit different. I definitely think there's an element of audience misbehaviour going on. I think some people have come out of lockdown and they've forgotten how to behave in some ways. I think there's a little bit of etiquette missing, and I think that's becoming quite apparent sometimes in the audience at comedy shows.
Because you had something happen to you in this very room.
Yes, literally here. I was emceeing my regular Monday night comedy club, and I was talking about my top. I think somebody in the audience worked at a shop, and I was like, oh, I think this top's from there. And in a split second, somebody from the audience had jumped up onto the stage and had his hand down the back of my top, and was just rummaging and had his hand down there, and I was just like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't audience participation, this is nuts. But yeah, I mean, it really made me jump at the time because I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know if he was reaching my top to lift it up or to push me or what. For that split second, all I know is it was dark, there was bright lights, all of a sudden there's a man with his hand on the back of my neck.
That's scary.
And it was just weird.
So why are we here post-pandemic?
I think there's probably a good argument to say that we didn't go to live events for so long that actually there's a little bit of memory loss on actually how to behave. I think people forget that you are, generally asked to sit down throughout the performance, and also we've got used to seeing things on Zoom and on our phones and maybe not interacting with people in the same way that we did on a regular basis before COVID. And so again, you're finding people are getting up and walking around and shouting out and doing things, and it almost makes you feel like you're on Gogglebox and they're watching you through the TV. You kind of have to go, hello, no, this is real, okay, goodbye, see you later then, would you get me a drink on your way out? It's just, I think that's part of it as well. Do
you think we've forgotten how to behave, and watching a government, let's say, who's also had some indiscretions as well?
Yes. I think it totally is. I mean, if you take it back to, I don't know, it's not the best analogy, but when you're a child, you look to the adults around you, whether they're your parents or your teachers or your neighbours or your peers, don't you? And you learn from them, and if they do naughty things, you might pick up on it. And I think you can kind of look at that in the lens of what's going on now. We've all been abiding by so many rules, so many restrictions, so many lockdowns, and then yet the people who are, if you like, our parents or our people of authority apparently haven't been listening to a lot of their own rules, which is quite frustrating. So I don't think it's right. I don't think you should copy bad behaviour, but I can also look at it and go, I can see where some people might have picked up the notions that these things are okay.
There's a political free rein almost, isn't there? That kind of gives people the free rein to do what they want.
Yeah, totally. And I think people have looked at, all the things that have gone on with Boris and him. I was nearly going to swear then, sorry. I was going to say his darn Christmas party. And they're feeling frustrated. They're thinking, well, I had Christmas at home on my own and they had their party. And actually, I think some people probably go into the mindset of just thinking, well, I don't care, whatever, I'm going to do what I want anyway. And that translates to other parts of their life, whether it's at work or, on the road or at comedy. And it's like, you still need to behave when you're in other people's spaces.
And you put out a Facebook post, didn't you, asking other people whether they had experiences. What kind of responses did you get?
Got quite a lot. Yeah, so I put a post out, and I did it on Facebook, and I did it on Twitter, basically explaining what had happened here with the weird collar incident. And I just wanted to know if I was overreacting, or was this really unusual, or has anybody else had similar instances? And if they had, have they been since COVID, have they been recent, and did anybody agree with me that possibly there's been an increase in that kind of bad behaviour? And loads of people reached out to me, and a lot of people agreeing that they think things have got worse, with some really horrible examples of what people have done in the audience recently. There was a comedian who's visually impaired. They were doing a gig, and a man in the audience reached up on stage, grabbed her white stick and asked how many fingers they were holding up. as if they thought it was part of the jest, and there's just no excusing that, is there? I mean, I had another friend who is also a comedian, and he has cerebral palsy, and he had a similar story where, again, somebody reached up on stage and grabbed his sticks. Comedy is a little bit rowdier than, say, the opera, and that's totally reasonable, and we are very much equipped to deal with it, but there's a limit on what we should have to deal with, and there's a certain level of respect that should just be unsaid, really.
Right, Danny, thank you.
Thank you.
Seb Chowdhury talking to Danny Johns.